Imagine walking out of like a quaint, historically rich Welsh pub after a pint, getting into your car and looking in your rearview mirror, and you just see these angry red rope burns encircling your neck. Like you haven't been physically touched by anyone all evening.
Oh, gosh.
You've just been having a drink, but your skin looks and feels like you've just survived a brutal hanging.
Yeah, that's the terrifying reality reported by numerous visitors to the Skirrid Mountain Inn.
Yeah.
I mean, we're looking at a location where the atmosphere doesn't just put a chill down your spine,
Right.
It supposedly leaves a violent physical mark on your body.
Yeah, it completely transforms dark tourism from like a passive historical tour into this active physical assault.
It really does.
And that is exactly why we are dedicating this deep dive to the Skirrid Mountain Inn.
Hmm.
If you follow the paranormal world at all, this building is practically sacred ground.
Oh, absolutely. It's legendary.
It widely touted as one of Britain's most haunted locations. But, we aren't just here to trade spooky campfire stories. We actually have a mission today.
Yes, we do.
We are sitting on this massive research compendium. It's dated August 19th, 2026.
Right.
And it features over 50 distinct sources. Like, we've got official archaeological databases from Heneb.
Yep.
We have historic environment overviews from CADWOW, mainstream journalism spanning literal decades from The Guardian and The Washington Post, audio documentaries, and just a gigantic archive of paranormal TV and YouTube investigations.
And applying a strict source hierarchy to all of that material is our primary objective here. We need to systematically separate the cold architectural reality from this massive paranormal pop culture phenomenon that surrounds the pub.
Right.
It means taking the foundational claims made by generations of ghost hunters and putting them through an incredibly rigorous historical filter.
Okay, let's unpack this by starting with the legend itself. Like
Sure.
the story we've all been told by tourism boards like Visit Wales,
Yeah.
The narrative that gets repeated by mainstream journalists. And it's the hook for literally every ghost tour.
Oh, yeah, it's the classic pitch.
Right. So the core claim is that the Skirrid Inn dates all the way back to the year 1110. Like, we are talking about a structure supposedly built just a few decades after the Norman conquest,
It's incredible.
standing through the Crusades, the Black Death, the English Civil War.
It's a huge claim.
It is. But the legend insists it wasn't just pulling pints through all that history. It served a dual, significantly darker purpose as a courthouse and a holding prison.
What's fascinating here is how that paints a very specific, grim picture of medieval absolute rule.
Yeah.
Because the local magistrate isn't just a figure of the law in this scenario, right? He is the executioner.
Wow.
And the most infamous element of this entire narrative is the hanging beam.
Right, the beam.
The lore states that sentences weren't just handed down to be carried out later, at a separate gallows down the road or whatever.
Oh, they were done right there.
Exactly. They were carried out immediately inside the building with people executed by hanging directly from the massive oak staircase in the inn.
The body count attached to the staircase is what really catches my attention. It's a kind of like a macabre game of historical telephone.
That's a great way to put it.
Because depending on which tourism brochure or haunted blog you happen to read, you will see the claim that 180 or 182 or 185 people were executed there.
Right. The number just kind of fluctuates.
It fluctuates. A fish story, but instead of the fish getting bigger, the body count gets higher depending on the marketing.
Yeah, exactly.
And to anchor these huge shifting numbers to reality, the folklore relies heavily on a few key historical names.
Yeah.
So you have John Crowther, which is a name frequently tied to that original 1110 date and the specific tradition of the 182 executions.
Yeah, and then you introduce the ultimate villain of the piece, right?
Yeah.
Judge George Jeffreys,
Oh, man.
known historically as the hanging judge. He was this notoriously brutal 17th century figure.
And the legend puts him right there.
The legend places him directly at the Skirrid Inn, presiding over these lethal court sessions, and personally sending those 180-plus people to swing from the oak staircase.
I found it so fascinating to look at our source compendium and see just how deeply baked into the media this narrative is.
Oh, it goes way back.
It really does. This is not some modern creepypasta invented for a quick viral video. Like, I was reading through a Washington Post travel feature from all the way back in 1988, and it details these exact legends.
1988, wow.
Yeah. Long before the internet and digital ghost hunting, American readers were opening their Sunday papers to read about this blood-soaked medieval pub.
Which really sets an immovable stage for the future.
Mm-hmm.
By the time cameras started rolling in the 21st century, the narrative of the medieval courthouse, the hanging judge, and the nearly 200 bodies was already treated as an established historical baseline.
Yeah.
It wasn't questioned.
But here is where we crash that dramatic legend into the cold, hard wall of archaeological data.
Let's do it.
Because when I pulled up the top tier of our source hierarchy, the Hennep Historic Environment Reckoning, specifically reference number GGAT01623G, and the architectural findings from Tabel, I really expected to see blueprints or foundational records dating back to 1110.
Right, something to validate the tourist brochures.
Exactly. But instead, it clearly states that the present building is a mid to late 17th century structure.
Wow.
The timber framing and construction methods definitively place it in the 1650s or later.
That's a massive discrepancy.
It completely shatters the 1110 timeline.
Yeah.
It drays off by more than half a millennium.
Yeah, the source, Mysterious Britain and Ireland, actually addresses this head-on. They refer to it as the chronology problem.
The chronology problem.
Right. And this is the ultimate roadblock for the paranormal lore. Because even if we speculate that an earlier, older building existed on that exact footprint back in the 12th century,
Which is plausible.
which is definitely plausible for many ancient sites in Wales, though unproven here.
Right.
But even if it did, it wouldn't be the building standing there today.
Exactly.
Therefore, the physical oak staircase that tourists look at now simply did not exist in 1110.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you cannot hang a medieval prisoner from a 17th century beam.
Right. You just can't. And that chronology problem completely dismantles the Judge Jeffreys connection too, doesn't it?
Oh, entirely.
I mean, I looked for the paper trail. His judicial circuit is really well documented by historians.
Right, we know where he went.
Exactly. And the Skirrid Inn is conspicuously absent from his travel logs. And to add to that, I couldn't find a single surviving execution register anywhere.
Nope.
Even in the 17th century, the state was bureaucratic. Like, they didn't just hang over 180 people in a local pub without keeping a record of the state-sponsored violence.
Bureaucracy is often the enemy of folklore.
Yes.
There's absolutely no primary documentary evidence to prove anyone was ever hanged at the Skirrid Inn, let alone a mass execution event of that scale.
So what does this all mean then? Like, how could an entire village and tourism industry just invent a courthouse, a judge, and 180 dead bodies?
Well, what does survive, and what the heritage records actually confirm, is the beautiful mid to late 17th century timber work.
Okay.
That heavy, ominous oak staircase is a genuine historical artifact.
Right. It's physically real, incredibly old, and honestly visually terrifying, which perfectly explains why people believe the stories.
Exactly. And we've talked about this concept before, source flattening.
Yes, I love this concept.
Think about how we all consume information daily, right? You're planning a weekend trip, so you read a highly dramatized blog post on Land of Legends Wales.
Oh yeah, looking for the spooky stuff.
And then you might casually check a Wikipedia summary, or maybe glance at a database like HENEB if you're really digging.
Sure.
Because they are all served up to you on the exact same digital screen, your brain subconsciously merges them into one equal historical reality.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Right. You give the tourism site's claim of 185 hangings the exact same factual weight as the architectural dating of the 17th century timber.
Wow.
But when we strip away the flattened sources and look only at the verifiable evidence, the psychology behind the myth becomes clear. The physical presence of a massive, creaky oak staircase likely birthed the legend.
Not the other way around.
Exactly. A local looks at it and thinks, you could easily hang a man from that. And over generations, that visual suggestion morphs into a concrete story. The architecture birthed the legend of the executions. The executions did not birth the notoriety of the architecture.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, though. If CAD has definitively proven that the building didn't exist in 1110, and we know there is zero documentary evidence of these mass executions, why are living, breathing people experiencing intense physical horror when they visit today?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right. Let's talk about the experiential data, because the legends are literally physically manifesting. We see frequent mentions in the lore of the ghost of Fanny Price,
Right.
a name that heavily dominates the later YouTube investigations. And we also see the intense phenomena associated with Room 3.
Oh, yeah. Room 3 is huge in the lore. The audio deep dive from the podcast From the Word Ghost highlights Room 3 as a major epicenter for this.
Yeah, listen to that.
They detail sudden, unexplained temperature drops, phantom footsteps, and just this overwhelming feeling of dread that literally forces people to leave the room.
And the current owner, Jeff Fiddler, he actually went on the record with The Guardian in 2019 about this.
Right. He lives and breathes this building.
Exactly. And he detailed his own deeply unsettling experiences working there, like glasses moving, strange noises, an oppressive atmosphere. So the man holding the keys validates that something deeply abnormal is occurring.
Mhm.
But I keep coming back to those visceral claims. Independent visitors, people who have no financial stake in the pub whatsoever, are walking out reporting the sensation of choking.
That's the part that really gets to people.
Yes. And as we mentioned at the start, some are finding visible red rope marks on their necks after standing near that legendary hanging beam. Like, how does that happen?
Well, this raises an important question, and it forces us to look closely at the profound capabilities of the human mind.
Okay.
Specifically, we need to understand the mechanism behind the nocebo effect.
The nocebo effect, right?
Well, this is the dark mirror of the placebo effect.
I see.
A visitor doesn't just casually stroll into the Skirrid Inn, unaware of its reputation. They are intensely primed.
Oh, for sure. They went there specifically because of it.
Exactly.
Hmm.
They have read the itinerary, they watch the videos, and then a tour guide points them to a very real, very imposing wooden beam.
Yeah.
And they are fed a vivid, emotionally charged narrative about 185 people violently gasping for their last breath on that exact floorboard.
The brain takes that horrifying narrative and essentially panic orders the body to react.
Yes.
If you were standing in a genuinely atmospheric, creaky 17th century building and you are highly suggestible, the stress and fear can cause a severe psychosomatic reaction.
Precisely. Your throat muscles physically tighten, you find it difficult to breathe.
No.
And the sheer panic can actually cause a flush of blood to the skin, resulting in an angry red welt that perfectly resembles a rope mark.
That is terrifying. But the physical experience of choking is entirely genuine for the person enduring it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Their pain is real. The
Yeah.
terror is real.
Yeah.
However, the catalyst for that pain is psychological. It stems directly from internalizing a historical myth, not from being attacked by a 12th century paranormal entity.
So the entire building basically acts as a giant architectural nocebo effect.
That's a great way to summarize it, yes.
That is absolutely wild. And it begs the question of how this psychological priming got injected into the mainstream consciousness on such a massive scale.
Right.
To figure that out, we have to map out the investigation era and show how paranormal pop culture effectively weaponized the Skirrid Inn's folklore.
Because while the 1988 Washington Post article shows the legend was circulating pre-internet, the modern explosion of the Skirrid is tied to a singular media catalyst.
What stands out to you when you look at this media circus?
Oh, it's definitely the 2003 episode of Most Haunted.
Most haunted.
Looking at the archives from Higgypop and IMDb, that broadcast essentially strapped a rocket to the location.
It really did. It created an interactive blueprint. Like, they went in, they invoked the name of Judge Jeffries,
Right.
they hyper-focused on the hanging beam, and they reacted to unseen violent forces.
And once that aired to millions of people, it triggered what was essentially a paranormal gold rush.
That's exactly what it is, a gold rush. Once Most Haunted struck gold, every YouTuber with a spirit box rushed to Wales to mine the exact same staircase for views.
Exactly. Which brings us to the YouTube era. Our sources highlight the methods used by massive channels like Amy's Crypt, who heavily utilize EVPs and spirit boxes during their overnight stays.
Yeah, and we also see the rise of long-form endurance content. Like, the Ouija brothers have a documented investigation in our compendium where they spent 24 straight hours locked inside.
24 hours, that's exhausting.
Seriously, subjecting themselves to intense sleep deprivation specifically to hunt for the Fanny Price entity.
And channels like Exploring with Fighters utilize similar tactics, aiming to capture the sheer psychological exhaustion of existing in that primed environment.
I was really struck by the case of Tony Ferguson, actually, which was documented in the Abergavenny Chronicle.
Oh, right, the skeptic.
Yeah, he went to the Skirrid Inn identifying as a hardcore skeptic. His explicit goal was to debunk the legends.
And what happened?
He walked away claiming it was the most haunted pub he'd ever visited in the UK.
Wow.
The sheer atmospheric pressure of the place breaks down even those who are actively trying to disprove it.
It really does.
Yeah.
But when we look at what these investigators actually capture, the EVPs, the spirit box chatter, we have to evaluate if any of it is independently convincing.
Right. Are there normal explanations for the reported phenomena?
This is where understanding the technology is vital. When investigators like Amy's Crypt or the Ouija brothers enter the building, their interpretation of the data is fundamentally compromised by programmed bias.
Okay, explain that a bit more.
Well, a spirit box works by rapidly sweeping through local radio frequencies. It spits out fragments of music, talk radio, and static in fractions of a second.
Just a wall of noise, basically.
Right. And the human brain abhors chaos. It is an incredibly powerful pattern recognition machine.
Auditory pareidolia in action.
Precisely. If an investigator walks in already obsessed with the lore of Judge George Jeffreys, and the spirit box spits out a burst of static that sounds vaguely like
Their brain instantly bridges the gap and hears Jeffries.
Exactly. If they hear a thud upstairs, they don't think it's a settling 17th century floorboard. They think it's a body dropping from a noose. Every random sound, every piece of fragmented radio data is immediately filtered through the lens of the 185 hangings.
That is so interesting. So they are using modern scanning technology to quote-unquote prove a historical execution that the archaeological record emphatically states never happened.
Yes. It's confirmation bias on a technological scale.
And this creates an incredible epistemological clash in our source material.
Oh, a huge clash.
Let's look at the ultimate contradiction here. I went back to the specific questions raised in our compendium.
Okay.
Where did the Fanny Price story actually first appear in print? Is there any documentary evidence the hanging beam was ever used for executions? We established that the answer is no.
Right.
But the sources fundamentally disagree with each other in a way that is profoundly messy. We see prestigious mainstream outlets perpetuating the myth as geographical fact.
It's wild to see.
Like, The Independent published a piece on Haunted Britain, and they repeat the John Crowther and 182 executions lore, not as a spooky story, but as the historical background to set the scene.
They state it with the same authority as the pub's address.
Exactly. Meanwhile, the actual historians at Hen Em and Cad state the building didn't even exist then, making the executions physically impossible.
Right.
Yet the Ouija brothers and the teams at Haunted Rooms are supposedly capturing audio and video evidence of these non-existent events.
It's a huge contradiction.
Okay, but let's play devil's advocate for a second.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's say the historians are completely right. The building is from the 1650s. Could the ghosts be from the 17th century and the lore just accidentally attach the 1110 date to them? Or, are the ghosts actively lying to the spirit boxes?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, to understand that, we must look at how folklore functions as an evolutionary process.
Okay.
Why does the legend vary so much between sources? Because a local pub where 0 people were hanged is just a building.
Boring.
Right. But a pub where 180 people were choked to death, that is a massive tourist destination.
Yeah, that sells tickets.
A regular regional magistrate passing out fines for petty theft is boring.
Yeah.
A legendary bloodthirsty hanging judge presiding over mass executions is a blockbuster narrative.
Right.
Folklore operates on the survival of the scariest.
The survival of the scariest. I love that. The story basically mutates to become more virulent.
Exactly. The fact that the evidence captured by paranormal teams like EVPs, supposedly saying the name Jeffries or Fanny Price, directly aligns with the historically inaccurate folklore, proves something crucial.
What's that?
They are not capturing the ghost of a historical figure. They are capturing the cultural echo of the story. The investigative evidence is validating a myth.
Wow.
The narrative has grown so powerful that it actively shapes the interpretation of every creaky floorboard and every burst of radio static.
Which leaves us with a truly profound, unanswered question to wrap up this deep dive. I mean, think about the journey we've just taken through these 50-plus sources.
And quite a ride.
We started with the terrifying image of a bloody 12th century medieval courthouse. Then we peeled back the layers with Cad and Hineb, discovering a beautiful, historically significant 17th century pub.
Okay.
But then we plunged into the modern era and ended up with YouTube ghost hunters chasing the phantoms of people who, historically speaking, never even existed.
It completely challenges our fundamental understanding of what a haunting actually is.
Exactly. The central question we are left with is this. Is the Skirrid Inn haunted by ghosts, or has the legend itself become the haunting?
That is the real mystery here.
I want to leave you with a final provocative thought. Think about the sheer volume of human focus directed at this single building.
It's staggering.
Hundreds of thousands of people over several decades. You have the readers of that 1988 Washington Post article, the millions who watched Most Haunted in 2003, and the endless stream of modern YouTube subscribers watching overnight endurance tests.
Right.
All of them are obsessively projecting the idea of pain, strangulation, and terror onto a single 17th century oak beam.
It is a massive, unrelenting concentration of psychological energy.
What if a building can absorb that? Maybe the rope marks on a tourist's neck aren't caused by the vengeful ghost of an executed 12th century criminal.
Hmm.
Maybe they're caused by the sheer accumulated psychological weight of 1,000 modern ghost hunters profoundly believing that they should be choked when they stand there, an environment completely saturated with the expectation of fear. Which of those two scenarios is actually scarier? The ghost of the dead or the power of the living mind?
That is a deeply chilling thought to end on. But honestly, if you're an investigator heading to Wales to monetize a ghost hunt, the Phantom of Judge Jeffreys is really the least of your worries.
Oh, yeah. What should they be worried about?
Well, looking at the fine print in our research compendium, the Hineb Archaeological Database strictly forbids the commercial use of their historical data without written permission. So forget the ghosts of the Skirrid Inn. You should really fear the Welsh copyright lawyers.